Morning, it's Kim Hayden here with 500 Doors Real Estate Podcast, where we get an opportunity to talk with individuals in investing, transactional real estate development, talking about the ins and outs of everything in real estate and that, surrounds real estate, so you can make the decisions you need to make in building your real estate legacy, building your personal wealth. 500 Doors is simply about behind every door is an opportunity, and your legacy and wealth can be simply made off of serving the people behind the doors or investing in the doors to serve the people in your community. So our guest today, this is going to be a little bit different because we're diving in a bit more into the new agent perspective, but from an entrepreneurial background. So this is going to be a great conversation, especially for agents out there who are going, "Am I doing this right? Do I need to do something different?" So, Serena, prior to becoming a realtor, Serena ran her own multi award winning business and brand experience agency that was called Tigris, and I may have said this wrong. Tigris or Tigris, I'll have to ask her. Events for close to nearly 18 years. Now, you're not going to believe this because, she doesn't look like she ran a business for 18 years. She's a beautiful woman. Under her leadership, though, she grew this agency to 10 full-time staff at their head office in Pickering, Ontario, and over 2,200 part-time staff across the country. They won 18 awards and were nominated for several others in recognition of their work since 2014. Serena made the decision to merge with another agency in February this year to take on her real estate business into the next level. This allows her to free up her time to focus on working in as a real estate agent and a real estate investor. Between taking courses, exams, and obtaining her real estate license through COVID, Serena was also going through rounds of editing her book. And we're going to dive into that. I love this name, The Accidental Entrepreneur, which came out in October of 2021. Her book chronicles how she went from surviving a troubled childhood to surviving as a self-styled, multifaceted entrepreneur. Serena resides in Pickering, Ontario with her husband and young daughter. She is passionate about her family, traveling, health and fitness, wildlife, and sustainability. So let's bring Serena into studio. Good morning.
Hello.
See, 18 years award-winning accidental entrepreneur.
That's
I think
right.
I'm just getting really old because it's like, oh, Serena looks like she just came out of this, university.
Yeah, I
But
always think it's funny when people are like, "Did you start it in high school or something?" And I'm like, "No."
no, you just good genetics, good
Yeah,
genetics.
yeah,
So take us a little bit through who you are. We know you're in
sure.
Pickering, Ontario. We know you're the mother of a young daughter
Yeah,
who, you nurtured through this whole COVID thing. You had her shortly before COVID. Um, and you're a real estate agent now. So let's go back to what drives the entrepreneur. What is the formative or the pre-frame to your story?
yeah. I think for me, you set it up a little bit in the bio there, was just talking about how it was a matter of survival. So I had a troubled childhood. I lived with extended family all throughout high school and a good chunk of university and even into my 20s. So I think I knew at a very young age, like I couldn't depend on anyone else to give me anything, to give me any hands out. So that really resulted in having multiple jobs at different times. And one of those part-time jobs led to working with Tigris. I know you mentioned the the pronunciation of that, but it led into that opportunity. started off as a part-time brand ambassador, just like tons of others. And then it led into an opportunity to work full-time in management. And then I was offered partnership. And at the time I kept thinking like, no, like I want to be a journalist. So, I was pursuing those opportunities. I was working as a videographer on the weekend part-time. And then when that didn't really pan out, I took that opportunity. The benefit was that I didn't have to buy into it. I just kind of helped assume half of the debt that was existing. And then we were kind of off to the races at that point in time. Did that for 4 years with the woman that founded the company. And then she left for personal reasons, and we went through a buyout in the middle of the 2008 recession, but came out of that doing very, very well. And then I ran the business and continued to build it on my own for an additional 14 years. So you can appreciate COVID had a lot of changes and impacts on our business. Like you can't run events when we're in lockdown. So I took that as the opportunity. Like if I what if this lasts 5 years? Like, what should I potentially do? So I decided to sign up for my real estate license at the same time I'd written this book. Shelved it for a while. I went back and rewrote the ending. So I would do like a course in real estate, do my exam, come back to editing, and I rotated through that over the span of about a year. And then I ended up with my license, I guess, middle of last year, and the book came out later in the year.
Amazing. It really is. And it's funny because most people who are not in real estate or new real estate agents probably don't see there is actually a direct correlation between event planning and real estate services. Like
I even
it
wrote a blog
literally
about that because
it
there's so
is
many parallels when I started doing it. So,
it is. It absolutely is. I mean, you've got, the bridezilla half the time, and you've got, all these moving parts going on.
yeah.
And as I always jokingly, I love how you say the accidental entrepreneur. I've always joked that I was the accidental real estate agent because I was really more of an event coordinator. I sunk
Yeah.
in hard to my core farm community,
Mhm.
and I serviced it to the nth degree through events and connectivity
Yeah.
opportunities. And I happen to do a lot of business.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
So
but it's all relationship building, right? So I think that's the main thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I would love this opportunity because I believe that you will have a unique perspective that may actually help somebody with a pain point that they're going through in newly licensed as a newly licensed real estate agent. I'd like you to walk us through your first 12 months in real estate, what you learned, what you were like aha about, like this is like crazy, who
Yeah.
knew, and what you would have done differently from the beginning had you known.
Yeah.
How does that
Sounds
sound?
good. Yeah, that sounds good.
I'm really excited about this. I'm really
Yeah.
guys, hold on because I do believe that Serena, just everybody mark this down. I want them to go and write this down. Kim said Serena within 5 years will be in that top 5% of the industry as an industry GCI. And if you don't know what GCI is, folks, that's gross commission income. You should know what that because that's what we measure real estate by is success. But I do believe that Serena has all the markers of somebody who is going to be in that top 5% of GCI
Thank you.
earners out there. Because listen to what she's got to say. I'm going to turn this over to you.
Great. So I guess when I got started, my daughter was only about a year and a half when I got my license. I knew that I wouldn't be able to start working right away. We decided to keep her home until she was closer to 2 years old. So when I was interviewing with brokerages, I think a big thing for me was not necessarily wanting to go with a big franchise that had very high monthly fees. Some of them could be upwards of $500 a month. So that was one side of it. I was also looking at some of the luxury brokerages, thinking that they might help me break into that side of things. So I made my decision knowing that I couldn't start working for about 6 months. And I think if I could go back, a lot of the times when you're interviewing, they tell you things, but it's another thing to see it. So I think it's very important maybe to sit in on a training, see how transparent they are with certain things. For the brokers that I did decide to go ahead with, yes, they had much lower fees, just in terms of like an annual or monthly basis. And then there was a higher split down the road, but I found the training was not necessarily as robust as they made it sound like. And I think if I had been able to jump into one of those in advance, like I could have seen that. So after I went through kind of my first year having my license, I actually decided to regroup, interview with some new brokerages and see what was out there. And I didn't just take what they said at face value. Like, I want to see your software. I want to see your systems. Can I join some of your training sessions and see really like what it feels like, what their training was really like. So you can really see like how they're going to support you. And then I decided to make a switch based on some of those learnings. When it comes to my first year, it was definitely a roller coaster. I kind of didn't really start until January. And, there was one realtor in particular I was helping out with some different things, and we had a certain arrangement in writing. And I kind of learned after the fact that that wasn't really mutually beneficial. And I decided to kind of end off that relationship. And then I landed my first client who ironically had to turn out to be one of my former staff members. And I think what I learned is really to protect yourself. She was going through a hard time, but she had very high expectations on the level of service and things that would be covered in terms of cost. And I ended up signing up with another realtor just so that I had some hand holding for my first deal. And what I really should have done was added a Schedule A to outline, yes, I'll cover this cost, this cost, this cost. But if you decide not to sell the home or it comes off the market for any particular reason, at least then they're responsible for those costs. And I ended up taking a fairly large loss because she wasn't getting the offers that she wanted. The market was just starting to shift back in like April and May. So I'd covered the cost of staging. I covered the cost of cleaning, which actually went from $200 to like $1,200. We had to send some things to storage. That was like another $700 to $800. So I think I was in at like 7,000, and we were getting offers, just not necessarily at the price point maybe we could have gotten had it been listed in January. So looking back, that was a very good learning experience. Definitely handled things differently with my second client because I ended up absorbing about $15,000 in renovations and repairs on that. So I had to make sure if I'm going to agree to covering some costs again, I want to make sure that I'm handling it 100% the right way so that I'm not in a situation like this down the road. So I think for a new realtor starting out that, they may not necessarily have retained earnings from a business the way that I did, like $6,000 or $7,000 would be very, very difficult to stomach. So I think you need to be aware of that. There's so much competition in real estate right now. Everyone's expecting certain things to be included, but there are costs attached to that. So you've got to be like very, very careful. I also did try to invest in some other platforms to bring in other business. I spent some money setting up lead gen systems with a couple of different companies and tested those out. And I also invested in mailouts and things like that. Didn't get the traction that I necessarily saw. So I think really, you've got to almost take a grassroots approach because I think people are inundated with the amount of competition that's out there. And it's really hard to stand out if you're just sending out a mail out or if it's an online lead.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. So when I started real estate back in '99, before we had online lead gen, we were really trained in understanding our spheres and scope of reach within our spheres and what all those spheres were. And I think a lot of new agents don't get that training. And in fact, I think a lot of people don't really go into the depth of spheres. Nearly every human being has anywhere between 5 and 8 spheres readily available to them
Hmm.
between past work, friends and family, geo farm, spheres of interest, spheres of volunteering, there's all these things. And what we do is we tend to send a blanket notice through email
Yeah.
to everyone with the
Yeah.
same message. And why would somebody that you go to the Horticultural Society respond the same as somebody that you used to work with?
Hmm.
And unfortunately, this is a training piece that I think is really critical for brand new, that first 90 days, set the
Yeah.
mindset and know how to speak to people.
Hmm.
But with the cost absorption, I think that's really interesting how you are taking almost a concierge approach to real estate
Yeah.
versus most people who come into and I'm being very much a generalist here,
Hmm.
but versus a lot of people that come into real estate from a sales background,
Mhm.
not from the service background you've come from. So it's a
Yeah.
very different approach you're taking.
Yeah.
Walk us through a little bit where you're at right now and how you're structuring the language around your service and how you're attracting people, because I find it very fascinating kind of the road you're taking. Can
Yeah,
you share that
so
with us?
yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned that I was regrouping and interviewing with other brokerages. So I started that process in the middle of September, met with like six, did lots
Awesome.
of interviews. The one that I went with, I was unprepared for just all the amazing value adds that they had. They just weren't on my radar. So it made sense to make that switch based on everything that I learned. And then I blew through about 3 months of training in 2 weeks. I just wanted to hammer it out. So that was off my plate and I didn't have to go back to it. And then from that point now, I'm getting things like my lead gen system up and running. I'm moving my website and stuff like that. And then ideally I can regroup. And, with my business, I had clients and staff not only all across the GTA, but all across Canada. So obviously I'm not going to be working with someone in another province or something like that. But I'm trying to determine what the best approach is for farming my immediate area, because what I learned, my first 2 or 3 clients were, about an hour away. So just the amount of time sometimes going across the city was not great. So I'm coming up with the different ideas now, and even just a different approach to online leads. I'm learning a lot of those strategies so that I can ideally start farming and obtaining some people that are much closer to home.
Absolutely. And as a young parent, because when I came into real estate, my kids were all young
Yeah.
and I raised them in real estate. And people jokingly called my community the bubble,
Yeah.
because I was always within 5 or 10 minutes of my listings. And
Yeah.
I focused on listings. I did not want to chase buyers.
Yeah.
Back in the old days, we had to do the contracts manually, and
Mhm.
people were actually in your car, and
Yeah.
it was weird. And it's
Yeah.
like,
I
I
know
don't
who
like
was
you that
buying and
much.
selling during some of those times. I remember what that was like. So
Yeah, just,
yeah.
it's like, yeah, I don't really want you in my car. So
Yeah.
that means I don't want to go clean my car so you can sit and make my car dirty.
Yeah.
But I loved walking the neighborhood and getting to know the neighbors. Let's go through. I would love for you, if you're open to it, to share from your entrepreneurial business background the three things that you've identified that you're going to be able to translate into your real estate profession.
Mhm. Yes, I know we talked about event planning being very similar to real estate. So that's what I found going through, the checklists and the deadlines and the thing that you have to do to prepare a property to be ready to list, and just even contacting your suppliers and things like that. So I think all of that there's a lot of synergies with understanding some of those things. And I think just developing some of the systems and processes that with my business, I had a playbook for every single position in the
Yeah.
company. And now that I'm learning all these different marketing strategies with like social media and YouTube and all these things, I'm starting to build out my own playbook with things that sometimes, if I found a gap between maybe the program training, what the brokerage could offer. There was one instance where I was trying to solve an issue that the client wanted something to appear a certain way. I'm not kidding. I called 12 people between the real estate board, my brokerage, other realtors. Nobody had the answer. So when I got that answer, like that for sure went in the playbook, like everything screenshotted. And I've shared that with a number of realtors that I thought, that wasn't even in the Trub manual. So there's sometimes these things that you learn along the way that, you can learn from other people. So all of that kind of stuff has gone into the playbooks as well. And then I guess for the last thing is just, I'm just trying to think. Like, I think just trying to know what is going to be worth it to invest in. I think when you're starting out, you try all of these different things and you like to, test them out, and it all comes with a cost. But I think just taking that grassroots approach where I built my other business initially through referrals for the first 8 years. And then when we lost a big client, we grew significantly through SEO. And there is some benefit to that with real estate. But I think, you know, trying to take that community and neighborhood approach. I've got to learn some of these different strategies to connect with people that are literally in my backyard. So I think it's
Yeah.
just trying to learn how, learning some of the synergies, but what's different as well.
And you just hit the nail on the head. They did a survey through the National Association of Realtors, and uh, 80 or 80% of the top 1% of real estate agents claimed that local farming, backyard, is where 70% of their revenue comes from.
Yeah.
And this is really critical when you know that 70% of your revenue is going to come from somewhere. Why are you only giving it 10% of your effort? And
Yeah.
that's what I really challenge people with is,
Mhm.
sit down and document. I love how you're talking about a playbook, because being able to look at your 12-month forecast and say, okay, these are the things I need to do every single month. This is the cost to it. This is the, three different message opportunities. This is the collaboration opportunity.
Mhm.
And this is the distribution timeline for it. This is how much time this activity is going to cost
Yeah.
me. However, is it contributing to that 70% of revenue?
Mhm. I think it could even be lack of confidence. Like when you think about the idea of door knocking and, striking up those conversations with people in different situations, whether you're at the grocery store or you're, my daughter's ballet class or things like that. I think sometimes people lack the confidence maybe in those
Yeah.
situations, but I think you just have to force yourself out of your comfort zone and, make it about other people, how's your daughter liking this or what do you do? And just by asking those
Yeah.
questions, you can control the conversation, and then it's natural for people to say, "Well, what do you do?"
Exactly,
As you
exactly.
pass off your business card. So,
Exactly. I thought it was interesting. So I was with Roy LePage for the first 14 years of my business, and Roy LePage at that time had a disproportionate number of top performing real estate agents in Canada. So if you wanted high performance agents, you went to Roy LePage because it was just a smaller brokerage, but that's just what was their reputation all through kind of the 90s and 2000s.
mhm,
And um, they weren't cheap. They were not cheap. They were $1,200 a month
yeah,
was my brokerage fee.
yeah,
But but I did get incredible training from
mhm,
them back in 99. Again, things have changed. Brokers don't have the same access to resources and revenues as they did 20 years ago,
mhm,
25 years ago,
yeah,
because the fee differentiators, right? They're making less money per person.
mhm,
And what is it? At the end, they did a national study at the end of each year. An average broker in the United States made something like less than five. They cleared after all the costs and everything. They cleared like $5,000 per
wow,
agent. That is why brokers are, they're out there constantly jockeying and working to recruit real estate agents,
mhm,
is because they have a nut. So you have you know, 100 agents, now it's a viable business.
yeah,
You have 10 agents, maybe not so much, but out of that, they still have to purchase their technology. They still have to, there's such a huge shift going on with technology, especially since COVID.
mhm,
Everything has shifted. Everything has shifted. I did an interview with a gentleman who actually is sitting on a panel. Where is that? I should actually promote that. He cybersecurity. He's on a panel with Kevin O'Leary this
nice,
week on LinkedIn. And one of the things that I never thought about as a real estate agent was the security of everything I was doing, aside from where I housed my client's data,
yeah,
right? It was really fascinating. I had no clue, and I would think that, I know that they said for every one you see like a Sobeys, there's like 1,000 that are being ransomed
wow,
because they're going
yeah,
after these mid to small things. So it makes me
yeah.
wonder.
Yeah, we
Uh,
had
are,
something called Beasley Insurance with my business because my IT guy actually his company was held for ransom for the same thing. I think they had to pay $100,000. So when that happened, he was like, "You need to get this insurance." And like, you just never know. Like, there's a lot of phishing scam, and that's how they got cyber attacked. Someone went to, I think it was his manager or something like that, just asked this random question. It kind of followed this series of whatever, but it was enough that it was the gateway that they kind of got in and held up their, I
wow.
think it was their accounting software that they ended up completely encrypting and things like that. So it happens.
Wow.
And even now you'll see a lot more of that on Instagram. Like there's a lot of realtors having accounts impersonated and scamming for Bitcoin or, cryptocurrency
Yes.
and things like that. And it's been very, very difficult to have those impersonating accounts shut down or flag it the right way. So I think that's something that, as a company, Instagram needs to do better because it's happening a lot, like to a lot of people. I know it's happened to me a couple of times already. So I think you just can't be too careful.
And it happened to me. I was asking Vince about this, and yeah, so that it is interesting. I got this strange message from a gal who I peripherally know, but is in a totally different sphere from me.
Hmm.
Going, by the way, I've been hacked. Can you help me? I'm sending you a code, and I'm going, and I sent
Mm,
back and I said, I'm happy to help, but then I'm going, why is she
mm,
even? I'm like, if we're looking at in the old school lunchroom tables, I'm sitting
yeah,
over here with the freaks and geeks, and she's at the cheerleaders table. So
yeah.
why is she messaging
Messaging
me?
you,
So
yeah,
then I actually had her personal cell number, because I had done events and such where she had been one of our keynotes. And I messaged her, by the way, I got this message, and it's like, oh, it's a hack, it's a hack. But what I didn't know that Vince told me is they were already in hers. When they
yeah,
call you, the code they're asking you to share
yeah.
is actually the code to hack your account.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the same thing happened, actually, a family member of mine was sent a text, it looked like it was something from Rogers, but by logging in, they accessed her bank account and they took, a fairly decent sized withdrawal out of the account, so
Oh
it
my
happens in
gosh.
all shapes and forms right now, so you literally just have to
Absolutely.
be very, very
So
careful.
as a new agent, it's going to be, I want people to really think about this is ensure that you're using, I know that you're just getting geared up on KV Core conversion, which is
Mhm.
a phenomenal beast mode of a CRM. It's a
And make it
phenomenal CRM.
rain. Yeah,
Exactly. But the reality is that has all the security measures in it. So when your
yeah,
information is in there, so just be very aware as a new real estate agent or a scaling agent, that your information, even though you're not keeping credit card information, you are keeping information of people who can afford to buy a house. And
yeah,
those are great, great people to target if you're a
yeah,
hacker,
yeah.
right? So just ensure that you're doing that. So let's go over this real quick. The three things we had. We had the bringing over the information of um, how to procure sphere influence clients based on your past business. You that was
Mhm.
something you already had going.
Yeah,
Playbook, love
yeah,
this playbook, folks. Document, document, document. Open a Google Drive, document everything. Also, by the way, most top agents have a second and probably a third database, all the same. So it's stored in multiple places. Every
mhm,
person you work with, every person you talk to, every person you touch, be sure to have, even if it's just an Excel spreadsheet on one end, you'll
mhm.
have your CRM like a KV Core. And most boards that you are aligned with will have a free program also. So
Yeah,
I know it's triple the work, but trust me, you will thank me for this when you're in the business 15 years down the road. You will
yeah,
thank me that said, oh, I remember when. I remember when. So create
yeah,
your playbook, have that accessible. And the third thing is farming your community, finding closer to home opportunities and
mhm.
what resonates with your community. So those are three really good. And interview, and don't be afraid to jump, folks.
Yeah,
If
not
something
only
doesn't,
interview, asked to be a part of it, like, one red flag with one brokerage, I asked after, like, "Can I sit in one of your meetings, and can I, sit down and understand the software a bit better?" It's like, "No, no," and if they're not willing to be transparent with you, to me, that was a bit of a red flag, so and there were some caveats to other things that they were offering, but it just, none of that aligned with my values and what I was looking for.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I think that's a key for a lot of people now is that transparency.
Mhm.
That, people just are tired of the man behind the curtain. They want to see what's behind the
Yeah, if you're
curtain.
gonna make a move like that, it's a lot of work to switch brokerages, like, I think you really wanna know, like, what you're doing if you're gonna make a decision like that.
Oh, totally. Totally. So let me ask you this because In real estate, we are community builders, community developers, community leaders. What does, when I say the word community, what does community mean to you?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of different communities like you were talking about. Right now I'm part of a real estate education group, and then I'm also part of a smaller, like intimate real estate mastermind with 70 of us. And it's one of those things that, you build those relationships, you can give, you can receive. If there's ever anything you need, you can reach out to them like, hey, I'm looking for this. And, 15 people are going to respond to trying to help you out. So I think that can mean many things, but it's almost like having that neighborly feel, and it can take different forms. Like this mastermind has people all across the country, but they're all willing to jump in and help you should you need it. So I think it's all a matter of having those kind of circles of relationships and things like that that can help you along your journey.
Absolutely. And when you learn something, you pass it forward like you did with your
Oh, I
playbook
do.
when you
I always
found
do.
found. So,
Yeah.
you folks, if you have a question, reach out to Serena. I think she'll be able to find you the answer, that's for sure. So let's talk books. So typically I ask, what is a book you think every real estate agent should read? However, I
Mhm.
would like to talk about your book as a newly published author, and what does, first of all, the journey of authorship, and share with us a little bit of what people can expect from your book.
For sure. So, like I mentioned, I joined a real estate education company, and that was about 4.5 years ago. They were actually a client of mine with Tigris at one point in time. And then I was at the point where I'd sold my first rental property, which is a short term rental in Florida. And I was like, what do I do next? And then enter this company. So I ended up signing up with them. I went to their first investor summit, and there was someone, promoting a writing retreat in San Diego. And I was like, well, I know I have a book in me. Like I've had so many crazy things happen in my life, and it all kind of paved the path of entrepreneurship. So I signed up for the writing retreat, hammered out maybe 17 or 18 chapters of what became 31, and then came back, finished the rest. And then I was like, what do I do when it comes to publishing? So I just kind of shelved it for a while. And I think there's a reason for that because all of a sudden COVID came along, and that completely changed the trajectory of my life and my business and all these things for different people. So I rewrote the ending, and then I committed to finding a publisher. So I went through, a few rounds of substantive editing, got it kind of off the ground. But I think people resonate with the book from the standpoint of all the struggles I went through growing up. Like there was divorce, there was death, there was, being bounced around among family and things like that, and just having a lot of instability. But it gave me that the survival skills that I needed to really like be successful as an entrepreneur and just do go above and beyond in any circumstance. So I obviously talk about the business. There's some anecdotes that I'll include in learning, mistakes, like all of those different things, and then how it led into the real estate investing, and then ultimately getting my real estate license.
Absolutely. In your book, what is your hope that the what message is the hope that the reader leaves with?
Yeah, I think it is a message of hope. Like, honestly, in spite of the things that can get you down, to know that you're really in control of your destiny, even if it can feel like you're in a very uncontrollable situation at the time. And I think that's why I always, worked really hard in school, volunteered a lot, worked really hard just trying to make money and better myself because I knew that like no one's going to better myself for me, you know? So I think just trying to understand that even though these situations can be very, very challenging, it's up to you to try to look at it the right way, have the silver lining, and then do your best to overcome it, whatever that obstacle may be.
So where can people find you and follow you? Because I believe that real estate is only one component of where you're going. Am,
Yep.
am I correct in that? I get this
Yeah.
vibe that there is you have a playbook for yourself
Hmm.
that has a timeline to it that you're moving more into
Yeah.
a leadership space of
Yeah.
some sort. I'm just getting this vibe. Am I correct on that? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I do think so. Like, I think that oftentimes people think about, buying a house, and it's just like a place to put your head at night. And I think what they're missing in that equation is the fact that it's really an investment. And there's so many things that you can do to leverage that investment in different ways. So I'm very much walking that parallel line of, yes, I would like to be a successful realtor, but then also a successful real estate investor. So I've gone from owning a couple of properties, I've invested in many things, I've done a lot of private lending, and it's just, leveraging the access that I have through my home equity line of credit to invest in all of these different things. And I think sometimes people don't realize just how much potential and power there is by having an asset like that. I know we talked briefly about great books that anyone really should read, real estate or otherwise. But Rich Dad Poor Dad talks about that strategy. And, even if it involves sacrifice for a while, buy the assets, and then the assets will pay for everything that you need. Instead of just paying for something once you own it, that's it, right? So I think there's a lot of power with that. In my experience in business, there's write-offs that kind of come along with that, and tax breaks, and really just structuring your life like a business in a way. And there's just so much that you can take advantage of that you wouldn't if you just make a single income and then pay your bills. So I think people really need to look at that from the standpoint of like their legacy and their financial future and what they can leave behind if they have an asset or then they start to grow multiple assets.
Absolutely. I a wealth of knowledge. You're going to be a fun person to watch grow, and definitely believe that you're going to hit every marker that you put out there, and pay it forward. What is can you share with us all your socials and how people can find you?
Yeah, so from a real estate standpoint, it's fairly simple. Serena Holmes Realtor on Instagram, Facebook, all of those good things. And I also have another page for Serena Holmes Author. And then I have a link tree that literally will take you through anything that you might want to find, whether it's real estate, investing, my book, where to buy it, and things like that.
All righty. So now I would love for you to take us out with a quote that inspires you.
Absolutely. So I think one of my favorite is we're a product of the choices we make, not the circumstances we face.
And that is cannot be said any better, folks. I noticed I had the wrong background the entire time. We are 500 Doors. We are not Kim Talks. However, I believe
We just
Serena's
brightened up.
story, I believe her story applies to both podcasts. Absolutely. Resilient women in business and life, and leading voices in real estate. Um, we all need that support to bring us together, to move us forward. Real estate agents are in a unique position. We were deemed an essential service. We are the hub of our communities, be it the community of faith, the community of geography, the community of interest, the community of volunteering. But we only can be that hub if we choose to step into that leadership space. We can be the difference. So until next time, be sure to check out our Facebook group, A Real Estate Success with 500 Doors, here at our 500 Doors podcast. Oh, and by the way, go over to the Facebook group and check out our new magazine. We have some great features in there, everything from investment to new agent coaching to, hey, what happened to all the free money? Where'd the free money go? So until next time, I'm Kim Hayden, your host here at 500 Doors Real Estate Podcast.